The man known to history as Dr. Benjamin Franklin was born on the 17th of January 1706 in Boston, the capital of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, in a small two-room house. His father was Josiah Franklin, born in 1657 in the Northamptonshire village of Ecton in England, to a working-class Protestant family who for generations were known for their intelligence, creativity, and independent thinking. Being a younger son, Josiah left Ecton in the 1670s to make his way in the world, moving to the Oxfordshire town of Banbury to work as a silk and cloth dyer. After noticing that many Protestants were sailing to Massachusetts, Josiah realized that the opportunities available in America were greater than anything he could ever have in England. So, in 1683, he and his wife and child and their 3 children sailed to Boston. Josiah became a tallow chandler, making candles and soap from animal fat because there was little need for a dyer in the colony, and his first wife died after the birth of their 7th child in 1689. Josiah soon found a virtuous woman to be his second wife. Abia Folger, born in 1667, was the daughter of Peter and Mary Folger and the youngest of 10 children. Her parents were Flemish Protestants whose families had fled to England in the 16th century. Because of their harsh treatment during the reign of Charles I, they decided to emigrate to Boston in 1635. Josiah and Abia married in 1689. Abia would bring Josiah another 10 children, with Benjamin being the youngest boy. Benjamin proved to be a precocious child who many agreed was, quote, generally the leader among the boys. He loved to play along the banks of the Charles River and swim, sometimes experimenting with makeshift propellers so he could move faster through the water. He also loved to fly kites and once combined his love of swimming with his love of kites by setting a kite to fly on a windy day over a pond while floating on his back to let the wind pull him across the water. His family believed in education, so they taught him to read at an early age. To help educate his children further, Josiah often had a sensible friend or neighbor over for dinner, and conversations always included some ingenious or useful topic for discourse to improve the minds of his children. Benjamin loved these dinner conversations. To prepare him to possibly attend Harvard, Josiah sent Benjamin at age 8 to the Boston Latin School. Benjamin made rapid progress, rising to the top of his class and quickly moving to the next grade level. However, he was taken out of school 1 year later when Josiah realized that Benjamin was not suited for the clergy because of his clever mind and rebellious nature. So he sent Benjamin to study writing and arithmetic for a year at an academy run by George Brownell. Josiah took 10-year-old Benjamin out of school to work in the chandler's shop to help support the family. Benjamin hated working over the boiling cauldrons of smelly animal fat and resented the tedious task of cutting wicks. He once expressed his wish to go to sea, which his father resoundingly refused him. Realizing he had to find a trade for his son, Josiah took him on a tour of the city's craftsmen. These tours instilled in Benjamin a lifelong respect for tradesmen and offered him an insight into skills he would later use as a scientist. At age 12, after finding nothing to his liking, Benjamin began an apprenticeship with his brother James, age 21, who had recently returned from England after completing his apprenticeship as a printer. Benjamin soon realized he had found his life's calling. Few would dispute that Benjamin Franklin personifies the Age of Enlightenment, an era of intense societal and scientific change. After almost 2 centuries of religious wars, because of the Protestant Reformation starting in 1517, when the Augustinian monk Martin Luther protested the corruption he saw within the Catholic Church, the people of Europe were tired of constant religious hatred and looked for answers outside of religion to explain how their world worked. The resulting scientific revolution was propelled forward by the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in 1440. This revolution of ideas laid the foundation for the Age of Enlightenment. During this time, great philosophers such as René Descartes, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, David Hume, and Voltaire actively questioned societal values and sought answers through human logic. Scientific exploration and discovery also excelled during this period. Every day, newspapers were filled with mentions of new scientific or technological innovations from the likes of Francis Bacon, Sir Isaac Newton, John Bartram, Gottfried Wilhelm, and Leibniz. Benjamin Franklin was born into this world of free-flowing ideas and embraced it wholeheartedly. While it may seem strange to us to say that Benjamin Franklin began his adult life at age 12, it was common at this time for young people to begin training for a trade early. Benjamin initially resented the idea of being bound to his brother for 9 years. However, he soon realized that working in the printer's shop meant he had access to not only newspapers, but also books, pamphlets, and other writings, as well as the opportunity to interact with some of the most powerful people in their society through the printing of government documents, reports, legal forms, and legal tender. Benjamin learned fast and soon became proficient at typesetting and other printing tasks. He also worked hard to improve himself by reading anything available to him. To refine his writing style, he practiced by copying essay samples such as those found in the British publication The Spectator. He also liked to debate. He and a co-worker, John Collins, once argued the question of the benefits of educating women, spurred on by Benjamin's reading of Daniel Defoe's An Essay Upon Projects, which discussed this issue. He learned that subtlety, rather than direct attacks in debate, through tactics promoted by Socrates and others, worked best. All of these experiences taught Benjamin skills that he would use in later life. Benjamin initially worked on the Boston Gazette, which was owned by William Brooker, but operated by James Franklin, Benjamin's brother. After 2 years of working for Brooker, James launched his own paper, the weekly New England Courant, in 1721. This tract not only reported the news, but also promoted literary writing, and soon gained a reputation for being boldly independent. Since his brother always needed copy, Benjamin decided to take his writing practice and put it to good use. So he wrote an essay disguising his handwriting and using the pseudonym Silence Dogood, a widow. Once finished, he slid his essay under the print shop's door. The staff was so excited by the essay that they published it in the Monday the 2nd of April 1722 edition of the Courant. This was Benjamin's first published essay. Surprisingly, this 16-year-old boy managed to channel a woman's view to perfection as she talked about her mixed feelings regarding getting remarried, the need for arms for spinsters, and other political and societal issues. Benjamin wrote a total of 14 Silence Dogood essays before he was caught in October. Her success helped fuel Benjamin's pride. It also infuriated his brother. That summer, Benjamin had another opportunity to show his mettle when his brother James spent 3 weeks in jail without trial after publicly questioning the government's efforts to control piracy. This left Benjamin in charge of the print shop. In spite of his tender age, he published 3 editions of the Courant. However, James found himself in trouble again in early 1723 when he wrote an article on hypocrisy in religion. Although Silence Dogood managed to get away with writing on a similar topic with her prudish, almost naive voice, James' direct tone offended government and religious officials. The General Court ordered James Franklin to cease publishing the Courant. To get around this little problem, they removed James' name on the masthead as the printer and put Benjamin's in its place. If their relationship had been fraught before this, with James' nasty temper and periodic beatings of Benjamin, it became even more so after Benjamin demonstrated just how talented he was. It did not help that to make this masthead change to their paper, they had to release Benjamin from his indenture agreement early, only to turn around later to create a new one. Benjamin chafed at this. With only a few years left in his indenture, he decided to run away. He sold most of his personal books to raise money for travel fare, and secretly booked passage on a ship to New York, which sailed on the 25th of September 1723. Once in New York, Benjamin met the sole printer in the city, William Bradford, who had written editorials that supported James Franklin's efforts to address political and social problems in Boston. He had no job for Benjamin, but he suggested that he continue on to Philadelphia to inquire of his son Andrew Bradford, also a printer. Benjamin quickly made his way to Philadelphia and met with the younger Bradford. Although Andrew also had no work for him, he suggested that he talk with the other printer in town, Samuel Keimer, who did have an opening. Happy to have found work, Benjamin soon made friends with the other clerks in the shop. He also made a strong impression on important clients. One fateful meeting was with Sir William Keith, then Governor of Pennsylvania. Governor Keith was impressed by the young man's pluck and took an interest in his future. During conversations over meals at local taverns and invitations to dinner at his home, he promised Benjamin help in reconciling him to his family and in setting up his own shop. In April 1724, Benjamin went home to Boston to visit his family with a letter from the governor in hand, encouraging Josiah to finance his son's new business venture. While proud of his son, Josiah chose not to provide financial support. During this visit, Benjamin met with Cotton Mather. The religious sage had learned of Benjamin's recent success in Philadelphia and his bravado around Boston. He decided to invite Benjamin over to review his large library. During this visit, while they traveled through a narrow hall in the home, Mather suddenly shouted, "Stoop! Stoop!" Benjamin, not understanding the warning, whacked his head on a low beam. While Benjamin rubbed his sore head, Mather said, "Let this be a caution to you not always to hold your head so high. Stoop, young man, stoop, as you go through this world, and you'll miss many hard lumps." Benjamin soon learned what Mather had hoped to teach him. When Benjamin returned to Philadelphia, he met with Governor Keith. Upon learning that Josiah refused to provide money for Benjamin to start a printing shop of his own, the governor declared that he would do it. But first, Benjamin had to go to London to purchase supplies. He promised to provide a list of required materials and a letter of credit. Benjamin assumed all would be well, yet in November 1724, he found himself sailing to England without these papers. All he had was a fellow printing clerk, James Ralph, for companionship. They arrived in London on Christmas Eve. He now understood Mather's warning. Luckily, a fellow passenger befriended Benjamin. His name was Thomas Denham, a Quaker merchant. It was from Denham that he learned about Governor Keith's character. With advice from Denham, Benjamin resolved to make the best of a bad situation. He found an inexpensive place to live and landed a printing job at the printing house of Samuel Palmer. Ralph, on the other hand, tried several professions, all a dismal failure. But they had fun on Benjamin's income, attending the theatre and other entertainments. They eventually had a falling out over a girl. During his time in London, Benjamin's ideas about life began to solidify. After reading William Wollaston's The Religion of Nature Delineated, he had a revelation. Wollaston explained that the only way to understand God's divine character was to study science and nature. Benjamin agreed. He would eventually become a nominal deist, where followers believe in a divine being who established the world and then saw fit to just let it manage itself afterwards. Yet Benjamin stood apart from that belief because he realized that all organized religions served as a medium for encouraging people to do good works to help others. At this time, Benjamin moved to a better job with better pay at John Watt's printing house and began to feel safe in his new life. Yet when Denham told Benjamin he planned to return to Philadelphia and wanted to make him his clerk at his store there, Benjamin decided to take the offer. One reason was that Denham provided a good example of how to conduct oneself that Benjamin wanted to model. For example, before they left for America, Denham threw a lavish dinner for his creditors. During the meal, he thanked them profusely for their assistance and at the end of the meal asked them to look under their dinner plates. There, they found their payments with interest. This impressed Benjamin. On the voyage back to America in July 1726, Benjamin resolved to live a more effective life through better behavior. He had seen, through Ralph's and others' behaviors, how people can be led astray by not controlling their desires and emotions. Thus, he established 4 rules of conduct, summarized as: first, to live frugally and pay all debts. Second, to only speak the truth. Third, to work hard, as industry and patience were the only way to true prosperity. And fourth, to speak ill of no one. About 10 years later, he would more formally codify these ideas through what he called the Plan for Attaining Moral Perfection. The plan contained 12 virtues. Temperance. Eat not to dullness. Drink not to elevation. Silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. Order. Let all of your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. Resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. Frugality. Make no expense, but to do good to others or yourself. That is, waste nothing. Industry. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. Sincerity. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently and justly. And if you speak, speak accordingly. Justice. Wrong none by doing injuries or omitting the benefits that are your duty. Moderation. Avoid extremes. Forbear resenting injuries so much as you think they deserve. Cleanliness. Tolerate no uncleanliness in body, clothes, or habitation. Tranquility. Be not disturbed at trifles, or at accidents common or unavoidable. Chastity. Rarely use venery or sexual indulgence, but for health or offspring. Never to dullness, weakness, or the injury of your own or another's peace or reputation. He purchased a little book to track his daily progress. He dutifully reviewed his conduct each evening, marking those virtues where he slipped during the day, and resolved to work on those faults the next day. He would refer to this little book for the remainder of his life. He later admitted that order gave him the most trouble. One time, he showed the little book to a Quaker friend, who remarked that Benjamin had forgotten to add an important virtue that he was often guilty of violating. Benjamin quickly added a 13th virtue, humility, with the goal to imitate Jesus and Socrates. Benjamin loved working as a merchant and was good at it. However, disaster struck when Denham died suddenly and did not leave Benjamin the shop in his will, which meant he had to obtain work. In 1727, he found himself back working for Keimer, but this time as a manager. Benjamin had numerous successes, including creating the first foundry in America for casting printer-type molds. When the New Jersey Assembly awarded Keimer the account to create new paper money, Keimer selected Benjamin to do the work. A year later, Benjamin joined a co-worker, Hugh Meredith, in establishing his own printing house. At this time, Benjamin also began his lifelong endeavor to be civically minded. His first effort was to create what he called the Leather Apron Club, but most called it the Junto. This group consisted of fellow tradesmen who wanted to improve themselves through reading and intellectual conversation on matters of the day. Being fond of creating procedures, Benjamin wrote a list of 20 questions to serve as the foundation of their conversations, such as, "Have you lately observed any encroachments on the just liberties of the people?" Or, "Have you lately heard of any citizens thriving well? And by what means?" These conversations became the inspiration for public service ideas that led to the founding of the first subscription library in America, known as the Library Company of Philadelphia, in 1731, which still exists today. The development of a volunteer fire force, the Union Fire Company, 1736, and the creation of the Academy of Philadelphia, 1751, renamed the University of Pennsylvania in 1791. These were only a handful of their many civic pursuits. As one of 3 printers in town, Benjamin had to make his mark. He used his talents by writing under the pseudonyms Martha Careful and Celia Shortface, and wrote his busybody essays. After a year of stiff competition, Keimer finally folded. Benjamin bought him out and became the owner and publisher of the Pennsylvania Gazette in October 1729. Benjamin continued to write essays. One of his most famous was the Apology for Printers, published in 1731, in which he expressed a clear defense of free speech in the press. it was obvious he had learned some important lessons from his brother James's experiences. To this day, it is considered one of the most important arguments in support of freedom of the press. This essay got the attention of the Pennsylvania Assembly, which brought more business his way. He was soon asked to join the Freemasons as well, which he did in 1731.
This video is sponsored by Magellan TV, the amazing documentary streaming service that covers ancient and modern history, science, the earth and nature, as well as historical drama. We really enjoyed the episode, The Pilgrim's Journey into the Unknown. This excellent documentary tells the story of the creation of the United States of America by pilgrims whose bravery and spirit of exploration led them to a brand new life in the New World. Just like Benjamin Franklin, these early pioneers were not afraid to be innovators of their time. Why not try Magellan TV? There are no advertisements, and you can watch content anytime, anywhere, on your TV, laptop or mobile phone, and with 15 to 20 hours of new content being added weekly, you will always have something to watch. And with an annual membership costing only $59.88, you pay only $4.99 per month for over 3,500 hours of viewing time. The People Profiles viewers will get a 1-month free trial by clicking on the link in the description.
Officially successful, Benjamin renewed the friendship he had with Deborah Reed before he had sailed for England. She had married in the interim to a rogue, John Rogers, who abandoned her, leaving a trail of debt behind him. Because they did not know if Rogers was still alive, they resolved the situation by pursuing a common law marriage, which they consummated in September 1730. It proved to be a fruitful and positive marriage for both. Benjamin called her his good and faithful helpmate. Around this time, a surprise appeared in the form of an illegitimate child fathered by Benjamin, named William Franklin, born sometime between April 1730 and 1731. The date is uncertain. The mother of this child has never been disclosed. Benjamin took responsibility for the child, and Deborah accepted serving as the baby's surrogate mother. Although some think she may have been his mother, we will never know for sure. Deborah did give Benjamin 2 children of their own. Only one grew to adulthood, Sarah, born in 1743. Their son Francis was born in 1732, but died 4 years later of smallpox. His death haunted Benjamin for the rest of his life because he had considered inoculating his child, but had not found the time to do it. Benjamin also continued to contemplate the meaning of life. Through deism and his life experiences, he concluded that there was a clear connection between serving his fellow man and honoring God. He manifested this idea through actions that filled a community need, such as those mentioned earlier in the civic pursuits achieved by Benjamin and the junto. He also saw no contradiction with this belief while building his media empire. His first step in this effort was to publish an annual almanac, which was a popular way to provide information about seasonal weather predictions for the coming year and advice on topics ranging from marriage and wealth to friendship. If done right, it could serve the public good by providing useful advice that could make life more pleasant and productive for everyone. He wrote it under the pseudonym of Richard Saunders. The first edition of Poor Richard's Almanac was published in 1732 and ran for another 25 years. Through this medium, he wrote some of his most famous maxims, such as "Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. God helps them who help themselves, and he that lies down with dogs shall rise up with fleas." It proved to be incredibly profitable. His increase in wealth and prominence helped him acquire 2 key government posts that pulled him even deeper into governmental affairs. In 1736, the Pennsylvania Assembly chose Benjamin to serve as its clerk. It not only provided a healthy monetary income, but also put him in contact with the leaders of the day and provided him with a front-row seat to the workings of government. The next year, Benjamin was offered the commission to be Philadelphia's postmaster. Again, a lucrative governmental position that served the public good. Always one to enjoy good conversation with an open flow of ideas, Benjamin made a proposal to create what could be considered an intercolonial junto. In May 1743, he published a circular entitled A Proposal for Promoting Useful Knowledge Among the British Plantations in America. He explained the concept in detail, emphasizing that because he served as both postmaster and printer, he could function as the collector of ideas. Basically, scientists and intellectuals could send their reports to him through the post, and he could create a booklet of abstracts of these ideas that could be sent out regularly to all members. That way, the great minds of America could share their ideas amongst one another. He suggested a name for this new group, the American Philosophical Society. It began meeting in the spring of 1744, but was slow to start. However, eventually it became very active and continues publication today. Ever since the British and French first settled the North American continent, they had vied for the support of Native Americans. This led to a series of 4 wars: King William's War in 1688 to 1698, Queen Anne's War in 1702 to 1713, King George's War in 1744 to 1748, and the 7 Years' War in 1754 to 1763. Each had a European component to varying degrees. Although there had been little action directly in Pennsylvania, there was a growing concern for those settlers out on the far western portions of the colony. What made things worse were 2 main factors: Quakers who refused to bear arms due to their religious convictions, and a proprietary governor who prevented the assembly from taxing the governor's lands in order to raise funds to equip the militia. During the King George's War in 1747, Benjamin stepped into the fray by making a radical suggestion. He proposed through a pamphlet entitled Plain Truth to create a military force that would be independent of the Pennsylvania colonial government. He stated also that this new militia would run democratically with no class distinctions. Officers would be elected by the men, not appointed based on wealth and status or by a government official. He received a positive response. To furnish this new military association with cannons and related equipment, he organized a lottery that raised £3,000. Although this association never saw action, the incident had a profound effect in America by teaching Americans that they should look to themselves rather than the British government in times of need. Benjamin also made a lasting enemy in the colony's proprietor, Thomas Penn. In 1748, Benjamin had become financially secure enough that he could launch into a new phase of his life as a retired tradesman with time now to explore his other interests, what he called his scientific amusements. He turned over the operation of his printing house to his foreman, David Hall, but continued to own it and many of his other business ventures. It was a smooth transition because he had already used his newspaper and almanac as platforms to discuss natural phenomenon for years. He also took the lessons in humility learned earlier in life and applied them to his scientific pursuits. His goal was to make any discoveries useful to someone, and he rarely took credit or applied for a patent. He did his work for the common good. In 1743, Benjamin had an auspicious meeting. Dr. Archibald Spencer from Scotland came to Boston to present his traveling scientific show. When Benjamin happened to be visiting family, Benjamin attended. Although the whole show fascinated him, what caught his attention most was the rubbing of a glass tube leading to the creation of electrical sparks that the demonstrator could pull out for several feet. When Dr. Spencer came to Philadelphia in 1747, he inquired of the doctor and asked how he could also acquire a similar glass tube. He soon ordered the equipment through his contact in London, Peter Collinson, as well as contracting Philadelphia craftsmen to make particular pieces of equipment. With the key equipment in hand, Benjamin began experiments with electricity in earnest. He soon learned that the glass jars did not create the spark, but only collected it. He theorized that there must be negative and positive charges that either pulled things together or repelled them based upon the charge. He then experimented with materials and their level of conductivity. He found that a sharp, pointed piece of metal drew the spark, but a blunt one did not draw a charge as effectively, and, if grounded, it did not charge at all. He then began experiments to capture and store electricity using glass jars, called Leyden jars, after the Dutch town where they were first created.